Welcome back, my starving Toriko fans and anyone new. I took an extended break, but today is very special, as we've gone over Toriko and the Heavenly Kings, the three disciples, sous chefs of the gourmet corps, characters like Brunch or Chief Mansum, not handsome, and we've broken down the 8 kings, Blue Nitro, and even the gourmet world at large. But today our storyline comes to an end as we journey back to the beginning of Toriko, or should I say the prelude. Long before our protagonists were born, as we've talked about, there lived the gourmet god Acacia, god chef Froze, and their 3 adopted children, the powerhouses we came to know as world-level beings, the disciples. But of course, before I continue, shameless plugs, please leave a like on the video, really helps us get seen and noticed in the algorithm. And once it's over, if you liked it, consider subscribing, maybe leaving a comment down below. But begin. Acacia's family is the one representation we have of his life. Being the man that discovered the gourmet jellyfish and subsequently gourmet cells, Acacia was known as the patron god of gourmet hunters and cooks. By introducing God to the warring superpowers of the world, Acacia stopped the global war. It's thought that he is directly responsible for discovering the vast majority of human world locations and ingredients. This influence so strong that people have built shrines and temples in his name and pray to him for good fortune. However, at some point in his travels, Acacia encounters the Nitro and eventually the Blue Nitro pair. Both deep within the gourmet world and on the brink of death, choose to eat upon each other to sustain their very selves. This was the birth of Acacia's involvement with the Blue Nitro and the discovery of Acacia's lurking gourmet cell demon, Neo, the bottomless abyss of hunger. Upon learning that the gourmet nobles set out to enact their century-long plan of sealing Neo, this led to the confrontation between them and Acacia's family, where he orders his sons to stand down. He and Froze are taken to, as we know, prepare God. Upon returning, we find that Froze is severely exhausted, and even Acacia looks worse for wear. The cooking of God required nearly everything Froze had, and even then, after Medora is injured trying to heal her, she gives the last dredges of her life to save the boy. After this, Froze dies, and Acacia tells Achiryu that he must now go and that the mantle of defending humanity and its safeguarding is passed on to him. Achiryu inherits the role. Once Acacia decides to leave, I theorize Acacia went to the gourmet nobles, obviously, to learn how to fully awaken and satisfy his endless hunger that he only recently found out was named Neo. And it's stated that Acacia possessed a darker side, the side of his personality that I assume Neo influences the most. Acacia, throughout his journeys, building a family, saving the world, was himself desperately trying to satisfy the endless void he felt within. And that void was Neo. We know a lot more about Neo's origins in that he was originally amongst the gourmet demons that the Blue Nitro used to shock planets into development. Neo, however, was weak, small, and timid in comparison to the other demons, and this is what led to the extinction of the Blue Universe. You see, Neo was so overlooked that his captors forgot to actually round him up after their work was done, noting that he'd likely just get killed by something on the planet. And that was the opposite. Neo descended on the creatures of this unknown world with a ferocity they'd never seen. With no one to keep it in check or control how much it eat, it began a literal campaign of terror. And Neo wasn't just a mindless beast. It was a highly intelligent and incredibly sadistic predator, preferring to relentlessly hunt its prey down until it had finally become exhausted and realized it could not get away, giving into the terror, which was Neo's favorite flavor. It's assumed Neo did this and even worse amongst the countless planets it destroyed. And for a quick second, I need everyone to think about this. Neo didn't take out just a solar system. It devoured all life in the entire Blue Universe. Not galaxy, universe. Our known universe contains trillions of galaxies. Each galaxy has billions of stars and billions of planets that could orbit them, and still billions of them could be the habitable ones that would contain life. Neo drove this entire universe to extinction, whether through his hands directly or simply massively disrupting the ecosystems of those planets. While we have to note, it was over a large period of time, and in Neo's time, he had died on several occasions, whether from meeting superior beings or being caught in, supernovas, which are the death of stars. Despite any of these forces, Neo, being a gourmet cell demon, would infinitely revive and continue its spree of gluttony. And this should be a good example that Neo, even though an individual, is more akin to a literal force of nature. This is why the gourmet nobles, who were survivors by the way, had even appeared in Red Space. They had been pursuing Neo for millions of years. It's unknown how exactly Acacia inherited Neo as his gourmet cell demon, but I'm pretty sure the demons do choose their host. As I did notice, it is not really explained how or why the demons choose their host, but it can be assumed because of their natural tendencies. We have to remember gourmet cell demons are in fact simply living appetite energy. And much like our own universe's laws of conservation, appetite energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can change from one form to another. Example being the gourmet cell demons, nitro, or even the physical manifesting of the energy in attacks that result in effects like spatula, fork, knife, and frying pan, etc. I believe Neo chose Acacia because he had some sort of void or emptiness within him. When Acacia first revealed, which by the way wasn't really a shocker, there was not a single hint outside of him being a legend that would make you think he would become the final in-game boss. We first see Acacia is depicted as a huge twisted mass of flesh and muscle, and we realize how strong he is as on his first reveal, he kills one of the Blue Nitro, God, due to it being weakened from cooking the full course. The Blue Nitro order Acacia to come to the surface and tell him he needs to only wait a little longer, and Acacia or Neo, I'm not sure, is not pleased with this information and sends out 7 fragments of itself across the gourmet world. These fragments wreak havoc on entry until they are taken out by the rest of the world's heavy hitters like Jiro and King. This still showing the danger that even a single satellite of Neo could threaten life on the planet. Atop that, Acacia was already peak of the world before his disappearance, and in this arc of Toriko, we get to see the true power of the mythical god/hunter in its full glory. Acacia launches into a literal gauntlet at the end series, killing one Blue Nitro, and moving forward, his first real opponent being the Calamity Don Slime. In this battle, not only did we get a reality check, but we also got to see the first large-scale clashes that the end series had to offer. Don Slime, even before he attacked Acacia and Neo, split the ocean depths of Area 7 and threw himself out of orbit and jumped back down to Earth on top of Acacia. I could go on at length about their ensuing battle, but we all know not a single attack Don Slime launched phased Neo. From Black Lightning, direct physical attacks, or appetite energy, Neo after every blow simply darted back in front of Don Slime. So here's where our first durability feats start to trickle in. Don Slime's attacks could easily scale his continental or planetary level or higher. Even when he grew and released multiple humongous meteors, Neo still tanked these calamity level impacts. Was Don Slime weak? Not in the slightest. Even in Asuruti's body, Slime displayed feats that are rivaled by the only other beings like Neo, Acacia, or the 3 disciples. The truth is that Neo had evolved since their last encounter, and possibly during this one. The explosions from Don Slime's attacks could be felt across the planet and seen from space, and none of them appear to actually harm Neo. Neo's only response was biting off pieces of Don Slime, who stated nothing of this universe should be capable of eating him. And as I'm sure everyone's waiting, Neo also tanked the detonation of a small star launched by Don Slime. Now, we can debate on whether Neo absorbed the energy or it was contained due to Don Slime trying to protect the planet, but just like Jiro's damage knocking, I don't care, it got minimized. A regular supernova is powerful enough to destroy its own solar system and irradiate all forms of life within several light years. As I've stated in previous videos, a star's detonation, even a small star such as a red dwarf, explodes with such a cosmic level of power, it could be its own Big Bang. Acacia and Pear simply gaze on in disappointment as even the age-old being once known as the king of the universe screams as he is devoured by Neo. This was one of those moments we had to think, if Ichiryu had come back, could he and Don Slime have beat these monsters? Personally, I believe it was written in the way that we'd see the old guard fail with the heaviest hitters going down and it being up to our protagonist and crew. And these chapters were certainly a statement from Shimakuro. Don Slime, the expected solution to Neo, or at least counter, was dispatched in mere moments. And all the build-up and displays of power thus far were to simply show how dangerous Neo and Acacia truly were. And as you could imagine, shit got even crazier and nothing could prepare us for what came next. The next battle was against his own son and son of the Wolf King, Knocking Master Jiro. After Jiro destroys half the Blue Nitro's roster, the rest sick Acacia on his former disciple. Acacia instantly begins the fight by decapitating Jiro before any words are spoken, but luckily Jiro had a life orb to tank the damage. And though it would appear that Jiro had the upper hand in the battle, Acacia turns the table with his first noteworthy feat. Jiro attempted to use Grand Knocking to stop the world's rotation in time. As if waiting for this moment, Acacia uses Neo to absorb the impact, and if you remember the Naki Master Jiro video, we learned that to stop the Earth's rotation, you would have to create a force that matches or exceeds the force of the Earth's rotation, and to do that would result in catastrophic effects on the Earth itself. Acacia in quick succession undoes his own knocking with his tongue, and then, well, undoes Jiro's knocking. With years of experience, Acacia essentially speed ran the battle by simply unleashing multiple planets worth of destructive energy within Jiro, even declaring in his son's final moments that the time they spent as a family didn't matter to him, and that the only thing he had to say after killing his child of several hundred years was, "Do memories have a taste?" Something I think truly speaks on the bottomless void that is Acacia's appetite and his nature. These memories would have been remorse or sorrow for anyone else, and Acacia really said, "Damn, do they have a taste? Could this be what I'm looking for?" One thing to note is that Acacia killed Jiro with his experience as a gourmet hunter, not Neo's power outright. Now, after these battles, the gourmet eclipse reaches its peak, and God, the world's greatest dish, is born. In short, a giant frog that ate the moon and displayed faster than light and planetary level feats. After struggling against God, Toriko and the other kings are astounded by its power. The golden chef Gigi begins to explain to them the method to prepare God when Acacia and Joy arrive on the battlefield, with Acacia instantly devouring Gigi and regarding everyone else in attendance as annoying flies, Toriko and Starjoing being the best. The group is shocked by the emergence of the legend, with Coco saying even Acacia is more revered than most historical figures of their time, and Toriko making a stand and asking how Acacia killed his own disciple in Jiro. Keeping it brief, as I alluded earlier, Acacia stated he had been 4 or 5 years old when he first discovered an ingredient and became a hunter. And even then, he knew that a beast of hunger lurked within him. Acacia described this feeling as endless rage and frantic love, which sounds like mania in my opinion, but anyway. Like a madman, Acacia set out to sate this hunger, to escape, and when he looked up, there were no ingredients left. He discovered everything. He questioned his life. Had he been running from the appetite, or had it been pushing him all along? And Neo answered, telling him that they could go on, and that there were more ingredients to be taken. And this is when Acacia gave Ichiryu the mantle and apparently the key to his fate, then seemingly disappearing. After this, we can only presume, like I said earlier, he went to the gourmet world to fully devour the full course, linking up with the Blue Nitros to fully revive Neo. The man, or monstrosity that stands before us now, is the end result of their bond for endless hunger, what Acacia himself would call God. After the battle pairings get settled, Toriko ends up taking on Acacia, and initially something weird happens. Acacia, somehow knocked down to the ground, is fascinated by Toriko, the current peak of the gourmet hunters, and his nature, saying that he is not the one who can make the gourmet dream come true, and that maybe it's Toriko. Toriko seemingly goes to dispatch Acacia when Neo appears and pull the same trick they used on Jiro, absorbing Toriko's attack and locking him in place. Acacia then creating a back channel to trap Toriko and lock him in a world where 1 second on the outside is 1 month on the inside, showing Acacia can create high-level back channels and literally warp the battlefield, meaning environmental advantages in a fight against him are all but non-existent. Despite this, Toriko stands defiant and even takes a literal chunk out of Neo and eats him. How could Toriko eat Neo, something that Don Slime could not even eat? We'll come back to that later. Now, for a second, I do want to break away from the main focus and ask exactly what was the gourmet dream Acacia was talking about, that even he could not accomplish, the presumed gourmet god. Was it attaining the full course, protecting the world? What dream is Acacia rambling on about like some old hermit? And keep that question in mind as we continue. We see that Acacia's gourmet technique is nothing like others, as he boasts that a true gourmet god only uses their bare hands. This actually being cool, as there are religions and cultures in our own world that practice eating with only their hands, as it truly connects one to the meal they are having. While in more modern accounts, we've adopted chopsticks, forks, knives, tools. In a way, it can separate us from the food, so to speak. So, yet again, we do get another crazy. After Toriko's red demon helps him block the gourmet hand, the blue demon leaps out and trades blows with Acacia, first hitting him with an attack that pierced not only Acacia, but broke out into space, and even matches his gourmet punch. Now keep in mind, even Horse King Heracles had to dodge the blue demon's attack. But again, Acacia's durability feats are already off the charts, and this is still pre-final form. After this, Acacia is attacked by God, who smashes him through the entire earth with his tongue and further thrashes him around the planet, alarming even the Blue Nitro. But even God could only make Acacia angrier. Everyone needs to keep in mind, God's tongue went around and through the earth in an instant. This is already a light speed attack, as this massive creature could lap the Jupiter-sized planet over again. However, the damage seemed to only anger Acacia. Before he could take a bite out of God, however, the 8 kings begin their assault. One after another, Acacia engages the literal gods of the planet. Being hit by Heracles' breath can pierce the earth, tanking Bambina's meteor-like punch, surviving and injuring Guinness after a blow that rippled the entire planet, being hit by Deros' interdimensional laser, and even resisting the pull of the black hole generated by the Whale King Moon and shattering the meteor it wore as armor. Though, Acacia's next feat is the one that truly sets off the powder keg. The Deer King traps him and Neo within an isolated back channel, and in this space, it's littered with some of the strongest monsters in the series. Time had also been twisted, where 1 second equaled 1,000 years, and the Deer King accelerated this even further to potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of times faster, attempting to snuff out the appetite demon itself. Even Neo has to eat. How long could it stay dormant, and could Acacia even find a way out? Your average anime villain would just turn into fucking dust the moment they entered this space, unless they had time-altering abilities, and even then, Acacia's own back channel was suppressed, so while aging thousands of years a second and fighting continental-level beasts, Acacia had to find his way out. And that's when the Deer King's plot backfires. Acacia tears a hole back to Earth with the coldest line to ever be said in Toriko. If lack of an appetite is the definition of death, then everyone but me is dead. So here, Acacia literally tears a hole through the back channel, aka a separate dimension. I've always compared this to Majin Buu's feat of breaking out of the hyperbolic time chamber, but this is beyond it, honestly. With Neo's abilities dormant, Acacia could withstand hundreds of thousands of years of forced time acceleration and still adapt while fighting behemoth-sized monsters, returning with a form that befits his self-proclaimed title of God. Acacia stated the reason Sky Deer lost was because he underestimated Neo's ability to evolve, saying Neo actually evolves while he is alive. But it was still tricky to adapt to a space where he aged hundreds of thousands times faster than normal. Acacia doesn't even wait long before he intercepts Toriko from eating God with a hand through the throat. This plunges the entire arena into chaos, and at this moment, all of the 8 kings ignore their rule of not interfering in one another's battle and simultaneously launch a barrage of attacks at Acacia. And the manga states that when the kings all take a serious stance, their target won't even have 1/100th of a second to react. Within the space conjured by Acacia, time stood still. Acacia even brags further, regardless of the chef, God's appetizing state was because the gods were beckoning him. Yet here Toriko is still somehow resisting. Acacia then breaks his neck, stating if you're weak, you don't get to feast. But this heralds the first time Toriko's white demon actually emerges. White's appearance makes Acacia actually scream and strike Toriko again. Though there's no dialogue in these panels, it is clearly shown Acacia is confused as to what he just saw and why his hand is missing. And if saying screw it, he lets his appetite loose. Neo emerges and takes a bite from God, and at that exact moment, the 8 kings attacks land, this causing a massive explosion that after the aftermath, at the center of which stood a naked Acacia and the fully resurrected Neo, holding the torn in half body of the still alive Bambina. Neo then roars and decapitates Heracles. And there you go, 2 of the world's most strong god-level beings dispatched in seconds. Next, we get to see Neo's true ability of, in real life, adaptation. The Crow King descends and with the Emperor's shadow intends to incinerate everything under his sun. Neo, in response, vibrates so hard he emits light. Now briefly, I will explain that yes, this is indeed possible. Through vibrating at certain wavelengths, light becomes detectable, and you can also vibrate in the wavelengths that produce radio waves or gamma rays. In other words, Neo theoretically has the ability to literally generate rays of sunlight destruction, but that's just theory. Neo emits light so bright it's stated it could drown out the sun, doing this to cancel the Crow King's shadow before leaping into the air with a bite that takes over half the Crow King's body. He's then eaten by the Snake King at faster than light speeds, who attempts to digest him with its strong stomach acid that even can break down things not of earth, which Neo drank like a soda, withering and nearly killing the snake. Despite this, the Snake King plunges into Moon's stomach, who leaps in the air so Daros can fire his dimensional laser. Neo blasts his way out of not only the planetary-sized Motherlock, the Whale King's stomach, and the spirit world in one go, damaging the Whale King, and even then deflects the Dragon King's interdimensional laser. The Kings, all despite their planetary warping feats, fail to do anything other than entertain the awoken Neo, who is beckoned by the now rebirthed Acacia, and here the entire Blue Nitro's plot ends. Though they plan to fully resurrect Neo and seal him, Acacia goes against that and devours his own appetite. So, before moving on, Acacia has withstood attacks that compare to stars deadened, to the Earth stopping, being hit by meteors, time acceleration over millions of years, and interdimensional lasers, or even light brighter than the sun. He got smashed through the planet by God and hung on with his tongue the entire time. And we also forget, Acacia is just as skilled at all forms of the Toriko versus hacks and techniques as anyone else, so he has access to knocking, gourmet food immersion, everything. At this point, Acacia had attained his full power and Neo's, boasting a capture level of 30,000, making him roughly 7 times stronger than all the 8 kings. But I seriously doubt that was accurate. Separately, Neo and Acacia took on several kings individually and didn't really struggle. Acacia's capture level was said to be above 8,000, and Neo's at 22,000. Neo alone would have been enough to wipe out the Earth and the surrounding solar system and galaxy and, well, eventually, universe. So I think they were a little understated with the power levels, but just like Dragon Ball Z, it seems that capture levels stopped mattering towards the end. One thing I want to mention is how Para states that Acacia couldn't contain the force of his appetite. And Acacia countered by saying Para was the one who told him by eating the planet's full course, he could change the outcome. But Acacia also mentions something called the true full course, something only he knows the location of. And this is something we didn't really get an answer to, but I can only speculate it was either another planet's full course, the universe's true full course, or the food origin place that was mentioned to be the birthplace of the gourmet gods, but we'll get to that. Next, Acacia announces that by simply transforming, he's released an attack that will devour the entire planet and remove all remaining obstacles at once. This being snuffed out by the timely arrival of Midoriya, and with the biggest Emperor ring in the series appearing, the true final battle begins. Now, as you've noticed, we do get some rather confusing dialogue about Froze's death and Joey's origin, but Acacia simply pushes it to the side by reaffirming he simply used Froze for her immense food luck and talent as a chef. This shows a back and forth we've noticed in Acacia, as it appears though he's tossed away everything in the pursuit of his appetite, little details slip through, like his memories after killing Jiro, his speech to Toriko and the group that he simply wanted to know what he was, and this, in my opinion, was the build-up for the manga's conclusion. Not just that, a shonen manga conclusion. But back to the story. With Midoriya arriving, the battle shifts to another gear, and he and Acacia began to have an outright Dragon Ball Z fight, with Midoriya blasting Acacia into space, who in return launches a gourmet hand attack that craters a portion of the planet, and Midoriya leaping into space and punching Acacia back down to the planet, causing massive explosions seen from orbit. Even after this, Acacia only relishes that Midoriya's attacks hit appropriately, harder than the 8 kings, but clearly not enough. While Midoriya is distracted by Joey, Acacia tries to sucker punch him only to get decked by a newly evolved Toriko, and Acacia is still recovering in time to knock Joey before they could die, and once again, we'll come back to Joey. At this point, we see Acacia's rage is starting to brim over. In an epic standoff, Midoriya, Starjuan, and Toriko each launch attacks that instantly get eaten by Acacia. Again, all these 3 characters have been shown to scar, damage, and warp the planet. All 3 attacks snuffed out instantly, and we get a true example of Acacia's speed and durability in these battles. At the moment of his first attack, Starjuan dodges using Future Sight. Acacia notices this, meaning he's adjusting to literal precognitive abilities at already light speeds, and this is before he's slowed down by Midoriya's Minority World. Yes, slowed down should be emphasized here, because remember, Minority World, yeah, opposite day the ability. the ability that can make your brain misfire, that can reverse and shut down bodily functions instantly. Yeah, that minority world can only slightly confuse Acacia, this long enough for him to get hit by Toriko's infinite spiked punch, which he stopped at the second hit. Acacia then trivializes Midoriya's hungry space by forcing his way through it, and like, the feats just do literally not stop for this guy. Midoriya's hungry space creates literal vacuums, not of air, but of atoms themselves. Even space, even though it's empty and cold, has atoms in it. It's still not technically empty. The space that Midoriya leaves then collapses and tears apart everything in it at an atomic level. Acacia's literally tanking a atomic level attack and then pushes his way through the hungry space. He also takes Toriko's jet fork and jet knife, both of which pierce and slice the planet, but not Acacia. The differences in power level are becoming apparent because even Starjuan is mortally wounded and Midoriya even loses a hand that Minority World can't reverse the damage on. Bringing back the point, if you are eaten by Neo, you can't regenerate that damage. So anyone relying on regenerative abilities would still lose. Even immortality could be undone, supposedly, because what's left of you to come back to after you're consumed by a literal walking void? Now, let's return back to Acacia's personal ideology. At this point in the story, Toriko is fed God by the food spirits and awakens his appetite demon and consumes it just like Acacia, putting his power level supposedly on par with Acacia's. And amongst this, the 8 kings and heavenly kings have all recovered from also eating God. But even now, Acacia once again simply calls them flies and mocks them. Here, Acacia acknowledges the anger within Midoriya, stating it almost matched his appetite. And then he asks, why do we eat? To stay alive? To leave descendants? No. Acacia claims we simply eat because we hunger. We don't eat for purpose. We don't eat for meaning. And that appetite is far more self-centered than any of that. The entire universe follows this path, but humans are the ones controlled by their emotion, love, anger, purpose really. None matter, as eventually they will all crumble in the face of appetite. This leads back to what I've always kind of said about Toriko. This world is a evolutionary arms race, not of survival of the fittest, but of who gets to eat the most delicious thing. Acacia delivers this callous speech before officially dropping the most outrageous feat in the entirety of the Toriko series. Using the gourmet hand, Acacia literally begins to crush the earth and can even still react to Minority World while doing this. Even when Midoriya repelled the first gourmet hand, Acacia made 7 more planet-sized hands, and as we know, appetite energy are attacks that can be given real physical form. So, let's say if one of Acacia's hands came into orbit of our Earth, the tides on the planet would immediately grow in size and destructiveness, and that's before even making contact with the planet. Acacia could juggle our solar system if he actually fucking felt like it. It really shouldn't be understatement how powerful he is at this point in the series, and the entire time he had been holding back while taking similarly scaled planetary and star level attacks. And once again, let's not forget, he even started to eat the cosmic force of nature that is food luck, eventually devouring all of Midoriya's. Imagine if someone could eat plot armor. That's what Acacia is essentially doing by forcefully interacting with a fucking concept. With food luck gone, even Midoriya, despite being capable of similar planetary feats, is overwhelmed. At this point in the end game, Toriko had gone through 4 separate power-ups. He had eaten God, awoken his true appetite with Sinner, been fed the cells of the red nitro, and had his anger unlocked by Pair. And some of these power-ups, like eating God, applied to the other heavenly kings and 8 kings. Even when all these characters empowered by God released their rage and attacks at Acacia, he still devoured it. But we finally see that perfect form of his is faltering. His body cannot contain all of the energy and damage that he continues to consume. But even then, Acacia in one fell swoop murders everyone. The remaining 8 kings, Brunch, Komatsu, the heavenly kings, one after another, are torn apart by Acacia. The moment was so intense, Pair could only flash back to previous massacres it had witnessed and even begins to break down in despair. With only Toriko left, even he admits that Acacia/Neo has powered up even more from eating the 8 kings. Toriko reveals, though, that since Acacia never had a true full course, Neo is slowly consuming his consciousness. Yet, Acacia still remains in control, striking Toriko with a continental-sized gourmet punch and raining down a dozen more planet-sized fists once again. But of course, everyone, this is a shonen anime. The villains don't win and have to be always ridden out of danger. Food luck, aka the food spirits, blessed Toriko. They restored his body and averted Acacia's planet-killing punches, along while saving everyone. The food spirits restore Toriko's body and avert Acacia's planet-killing punches. And at this very moment, Toriko unleashes his full course of attacks, blow after blow, each shaking the already crumbling earth. And still, Acacia doesn't falter. He begins devouring all of the remaining food luck in the world, stating that his appetite has no limits. Acacia truly proving to be the final in-game boss, until the emergence of, once again, Toriko's strongest demon. White emerges and immediately, Acacia notices that his cells, the great Neo cells, for the first time ever, are yielding. And with a look of final acknowledgement between Toriko and Acacia, Neo and Acacia are one-shotted by White. Toriko actually expresses sadness at this, and that odd side of Acacia we've seen the whole time finally speaks the truth. Appetites aren't good or evil despite their host and despite their actions sometimes. Acacia knew Toriko couldn't hate Neo, so as he put it, he, a foolish human, had to fan the flames of. Acacia actually chased ingredient after ingredient because he wanted to satisfy Neo, hoping that if he could find what it took, he could figure out how to bring back the Blue Universe and pair his friends and save the Blue Nitro. And finally, his eldest son, Achiryu. Now, we learn that the key flavor Acacia was mentioning, the flavor that could satisfy Neo, was actually love, but they thought it was hate. All the time, hatred or anger was the flavor Neo actually could not stand. Acacia wanted his eldest son to gather all his hatred and kill him and Neo. And in that moment, we learn that Achiryu couldn't bring himself to do it. This is likely why, as we've been talking about, Acacia disappeared into legend after this. He either chose seclusion or went back to the Blue Nitro to further awaken Neo and wait for someone who could kill him or ultimately satisfy the appetite. We see that despite all the horror we witnessed, Acacia still sheds tears because the entire time he held back Neo, he was worried, doubting himself, doubting that if he couldn't figure out his appetite, the fate of the world was doomed. So either his destructive rampage thus far was what was necessary, or currently the only way he saw to achieve his goal. Even in the final battle, Acacia was never fighting at full power. As it was mentioned earlier, nothing truly stopped him from creating planet-sized hands. Even Midoriya's and Toriko's attacks only really agitated him, and Midoriya realized this when Acacia appeared to have knocked Joe's body. He actually killed them because he didn't want Midoriya to be the one to destroy Froge's body. Now, despite his defeat and our hero's victory, the Earth is still crumbling from the battles, and with some spirit assistance from Grandpa Jiro at the center of the Earth, Teppei successfully knocks the planet and stops its fated detonation. With the destruction stopped, this causes a new problem. The Earth was the current holder of the cosmic baton of flavor. Toriko really just gets kind of wild, but when planets erupt, the ingredients and appetite energy stored there scatter and over millions of years reform into new planets and full course meals. Luckily, with Acacia's death, an unfathomable amount of the Blue Universe's ingredients spew back into existence, enough to fill nigh infinite galaxies. And the planet itself spews raw center, the ingredient responsible for rebirth, and rejuvenates everyone that's at the battle and on death's doorstep. Even luckier, with the manga's true savior being Zange, or Zombie, the random gag character that somehow survived the entire series. Zange apparently has the last remaining and strongest food luck, which Midoriya takes and copies to restore the entire planet. So yeah, the entire series, Zange's food luck was so insane he could literally ass-pull planetary devastation. And after the stream of ingredients and life stopped from Neo, the only thing left was his original scrawny form. And after hundreds of millions of years of having things taken from him, Toriko offers Neo a piece of God. But more importantly, he offered Neo its first experience of anyone ever sharing with him. And wrapping up, because this video is long enough as is, Neo gets redeemed, even having a seat at Toriko's wedding with Ren, even though he's killed several of his friends. But as everyone knows, it's revealed that Acacia and his family were all reincarnated versions of gourmet gods. From the beginning of time, this family separation occurred in the gourmet Big Bang 13.7 billion years prior to our story, which split their energy into 5 different colored universes: black, white, red, green, and blue, all like Acacia's family, well, theorized. Now, at the end of the series, The scientists in Toriko would actually make a massive breakthrough. Thanks to the full course effects, they were able to gauge the aftermath of the gourmet Big Bang, and what they saw was what appeared to be massive beings sitting around a dining table like a planet. What they were sitting around was actually a galaxy with a diameter of 10 light years, something to give you a bit of a perspective of how large the Toriko gods truly are. This, along with the confirmation of planetary cookware, means there are countless other galaxies filled with other planetary courses, other planets ruled by beings like the Eight Kings, and an infinite amount of ingredients to find and continue to level up. So Toriko ends with our protagonist setting off to the stars, with the group's first encounter being a literally gigantic planet-sized space typhon that Toriko declares will be their first ingredient. And with gratitude for all the beautiful moments and delicious chapters, the Toriko manga comes to an end. So, yeah, wild ride, everybody. If you couldn't tell, even with me summarizing the story, the end of Toriko is overloaded with action and fast-paced information dumps of lore, turning into, in my opinion, a Dragon Ball Z-esque slugfest with a typical shonen ending. The moment Don Slime detonated a star, the series should have been wrapping up, but in my opinion, not a single character displayed a single feat that could have challenged that for another 100 chapters. No one actually produced a visible star-level feat outside of Don Slime, unless we want to reach. Obviously, I love it, you guys love it, but quite frankly, the ending of Toriko lacks a lot of the detail that made the series great in the first place, from direct scaling and sheer volume of numbers presented in the character feats, or the in-depth exploration of ecosystems, the animals within it, and real-life cooking facts that were offered in the series counterparts. We never actually fully saw awakened demons from anyone outside of Toriko and Acacia, even though the other kings ate the same full course. Toriko did, and God. None of the demons got utilized, even the final continents got little to no explanation, with their kings additionally having no effect on the story. It's said that apparently Shimakura was facing a lot of pressure to end the series, and ended up cutting a lot of ideas or just speeding them up in general, and who knows what else, cause the man was apparently always involved in sinister stuff. But yeah, that's it guys. Toriko ends with a series-sized cliffhanger. If you've been following me through most of my time on YouTube, you've seen me slowly grind through this story with a little bit of a narrative twist, and it truly does suck ass to have to watch this amazing series collect dust on the shelf. Either way though, it might not be the end. It's not like Shimakura is dead or Toriko has been made the subject of an internet witch hunt. Who knows? The series still lives with us in the arguments we bring up in anime versus battles, but thank you everyone for watching. As always, I appreciate you guys' patience with this video. With us wrapping up the story and characters of Toriko, I'll likely move on to something like versus battles, but I'm definitely going to start exploring more of Dungeon Meshi now that I'm back from vacation. So, if you want to support the channel, leave a like, maybe even a subscribe. Drop a comment down below now that you've watched the video. Maybe, join the psych ward. Everything helps, but without further ado, we give thanks for the bountiful wealth of information in the Toriko universe. Itadakimasu.